Ready, hot!
From the Opopco Studios in Oklahoma City, this is an OU update. I'm Jenni Carlson. Oklahoma's football schedule is out, and Travis Haney joins us on the phone to break down part of their conference schedule. Travis, let's start with the ending first, actually.
Yeah.
Last three games are really the games everyone's pointing to. Talk about what the Sooners are looking at the end of the season.
Well, it's a real gauntlet. I think everyone, myself included, wanted to see where that West Virginia game was played. It seemed like the momentum was headed toward starting that series in Morgantown, so it always felt like it was going to be a road game. What I had heard, even leading up to the days in which the schedule was released, was that it was going to be a September 8th game or a 15th game. It was going to be the opener, and for whatever reason, it got shifted back to the end of the season to November 17th. And we were kind of talking around last night why this might be the case, a few friends of mine, and it seems to me that the Big 12 wanted to backload the schedule intentionally, so you had the teams that were potentially going to be in contention, whether it be OU or OSU, TCU, West Virginia. Those teams are all playing each other late in the season. Heck, that game in Fort Worth, until TCU got into its trouble, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with them. But that's a December 1st game that potentially had kind of conference title ramifications to it. And all those games do down the stretch, the three that you prefaced, West Virginia in Morgantown, then Oklahoma State, the Bedlam game here Thanksgiving week, and then the TCU game. So if Oklahoma survives that early part of the season, it could be really interesting coming down the stretch.
Yeah, you talk about surviving the early part of the season, and honestly, if you look at their home games, I mean, there are some interesting games, but most of the tough teams that they're going to face in the Big 12, they're facing away from home. How does this break down home and away in your mind for the Sooners?
Well, I think they're just happy they didn't have to go to Stillwater for the 30th straight year. So at least OSU's coming to Owen Field for a change. And, I think that was something they really wanted to make sure happened, was keep the road and away, keep the games in the series in order instead of having to return a visit that you made in 2011. So that did hold up the 4 home games against the 2 Kansas teams, Baylor and OSU. That's a reverse of last year's away trip. So they at least got that done. Having Kansas State here, I think that's going to be a team that will at least be discussed as a favorite. I'm not sure how it will work out, but that's a team that won a lot of games and returns a lot of players. So the opener is somewhat intriguing here at Owen Field. And then, as we mentioned before we started, that trying to avenge 2 of the losses anyway in home games against OSU and Baylor. So there's some interest there. And then Charlie Weiss and what he's doing at Kansas will, I'm sure, be of some interest as well.
I guess we started talking about the end of the schedule. I guess maybe the good news for the Sooners is they could get a big head of steam going. Do you see this as a fairly favorable schedule, considering you're going to have to play West Virginia, Oklahoma State, TCU, those teams eventually? Do you see this playing out well for the Sooners? Not so well? How do you see that?
It's hard to say. And, I think you have to look at the variables that you can't control or account for, such as a Ryan Broyles injury last year that completely changed the team's complexion in November. And that's when they were playing these tough games this year. So you hope for no injuries, you hope to stay healthy, and hope to be playing your best football in November. But, yeah, I think there's a chance for several teams, including OU, to have pretty gaudy records heading into that November stretch. Maybe West Virginia is one of those teams. I think its skill players are excellent and will be very difficult for anyone in the Big 12 to defend, sort of similar to what Baylor did last year with Robert Griffin and those receivers. And I think that'll be some similarity. You'll probably hear that some about West Virginia, but it sets up some really, really big games in November, and I think that's what the Big 12 wanted when it made the schedule like this.
Definitely. Thanks, Travis. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.